This is Susie Walker here, Psychology's Editor-in-Chief, and I'm here today with the wonderful Martha Roberts, who is the creator of The Colour File, which is this amazing Instagram account and business. And Martha used to be one of our columnists. She is an award-winning writer, specializing in mental health. We love Martha, and I've asked Martha to come to talk to us today because what she has done is she's pivoted her career. And I think in these weird and wonderful COVID times, I think it's a very interesting and inspirational story to hear how you can make your passion your business and how you can pivot your career and make that transition. Welcome, Martha.
Hello. Hi, Susie. Thanks so much for having me.
Lovely to speak to you today. So first of all, tell me a little bit about The Colour File. What is it?
So The Colour File is it's kind of it starts really on Instagram at the moment, but it's also a website. And it's a place where I basically, as I always say, wax lyrical about colour. Colour is something that I've loved for a very long time. And it's a place where I kind of talk about it in all kinds of guises. I mean, colour obviously is everywhere around us. So I don't sort of limit myself to sort of interiors or art or fashion or whatever. If ever I see colour and I find something interesting about it, even if it's like road markings, I think, right, I'll take photos of those and I will find out a bit more about them and talk about them. So that's where it's kind of come from. So it's a place where I talk about colour, but a place where I've also started to exercise my love of colour visually by taking different photos and more latterly creating art as well.
So what's really interesting to me, because I want to just talk everyone through your journey of having an idea, creating something, and then making money from it, you know, just from the kind of the spark of the idea. So, you know, it's well, I remember we just had a kind of a casual conversation, wasn't it? So what do you really love? You know, you were getting really fed up of journalism, and what do you really love? And you said, oh, it's colour.
Yeah.
And take me from that conversation to how it became an Instagram account, to how it became a product, to how it became 2 books, because you've got 2 books as well. You've got Shelfie and
Practical Tidiness. And both of which have got colour in them, you know, so they're not intrinsically about colour, but they both include colour. So that's in a way, I'll talk about those in a second. So yeah, I mean, you very kind of modestly said it was just a kind of brief conversation, but actually I had a life coaching session with you. And it was I remember it so well, it was in July 2016, and I was sitting in the waiting room of the educational psychologist where my son was having an assessment, and I just remember it so well, and I had said to you prior to that, I'm having a bit of a midlife crisis. The whole writing industry is changing. And, you know, you could really feel that there was this kind of like tectonic shift going on. And that we were all going to have to try and be more limber and try to work out where we were going to go with all of this. And I just couldn't kind of really see it. And I thought, well, maybe I should do something different. And anyway, I spoke to you about it and you said, let's do a life coaching session. And so I remember you saying to me, well, what is it that you love? Because I talked about, well, maybe I'll have a career change and become a psychologist, or maybe I'll do psychotherapy, or maybe this, or maybe that. And you said, yes, you've told me about all the things you think you ought to do, but what is it that you really love? And I remember just being completely foxed because I was like, well, I don't really know what I love. And I had to really kind of like dig deep. And I think it was almost like one of those, you know, sort of like doorknob conversations that GPs talk about. As patients leave, they kind of go, oh, by the way, doctor. And then that's when they tell you what's really troubling them. And I think it was almost like one of those that kind of like came in at the end of it, where I was like, well, I love colour. And you went, that was it. And you seized the colour. It was you that kind of said to me, colour, because you said, I remember you saying, you know, you've become very animated talking about this. You've become very excited in a way in which you were when you were talking before about becoming a psychologist or retraining or whatever. And so I really kind of thought about that, because the other thing as well was that I was never seen as the arty one in my family. I was always the musician. So art really was someone else's preserve. It wasn't mine. Anything visual wasn't mine. It was all about what you can hear. So you said to me, I said, well, I don't know what to do. He said, well, just start writing about it and see where it takes you. So I didn't start writing about it for a really long time. So because I didn't know where to go with it, I registered a URL, the colour file, which is the one I use today, but I didn't know what it was supposed to be. And I remember going in February of the following year, so a good 6 months later, to a press event where somebody was it was the launch of their second book. It was The Unmumsy Mum. It was the launch of her second book. And she hadn't trained as a journalist, but she had become this person who had reinvented herself. And I was there and I looked at her, looked at the situation, and I thought, I gave myself a telling off. I thought, what are you waiting for? This is ridiculous. And the next day I went home, and the next day I wrote my first blog, and I have done one every day ever since. That was the 24th of February 2017. And I didn't know what it was. It didn't matter. I just started it, and I think that was the shove that I needed. Was the realization of somebody else's success from not from nowhere, but from doing something that they had never really done before. So that's where it started.
And and that's the advice that we give at Psychology all the time is, some people think they've got to have this massive vision, and they know exactly what it's got to look like. And we've just done this big digital dossier about how to start your online business, all of this kind of thing. What we're saying to people is just start. Start, right? So it doesn't really matter who you don't know, but it's by the time you've written 10 blogs, you've got a much better idea about whether it's taking pictures or creating an Instagram account or something. You're in a better position to go, okay, this is what it is. This is what it's taking shape. So tell me what happened then. So you started writing a blog, and then what happened? How did it grow? How did it become what it is today?
Okay, so it started to grow. So what I did was, so I started growing it by sort of going to events, really, sort of aligning myself with people who I admired online. I mean, in some senses, there was a little bit of that was a little bit tricky, because at that stage there weren't many people writing about colour. They were writing about colour in their specific fields, but they weren't writing about it, sort of generically. So what I did was I found people who I knew loved colour and kind of became part of that circle, I suppose, and that was the kind of interiors world and paint companies and those sorts of people. And I would start to communicate with them online, and I would start to go to events. So if somebody had a ticketed event or whatever, I'd go to that. So that that thing of like your face becomes known, and then also you can start to say, oh, I'm Martha Roberts from the Colour File, which obviously is very strange at first when you're kind of like introducing yourself from an organisation or a business that is so much in its infancy that probably the only thing that you've got is a few Instagram entries and maybe a business card or something like that. But you just have to do it, and that's kind of what I did. And then the book side of things, I mean, that was through Psychologies really as well. It was somebody, a publishing company contacted me and said, would I do a Bible of a happiness Bible, I think it was, because I'd had the column in Psychologies on evidence-based ways of achieving happiness. And I got an agent as a result of that. That book didn't happen. But when I met up with the agent, I said, well, I've just started this blog. And that was only February, March, 4 months after I'd started the blog. I had a meeting with a book agent. And I think I probably had about 500 followers on Instagram, if that. And she said, right, yeah, I'm happy to represent you for the happiness book, but what else can you do? And I said, well, I've just started to do this blog, and I write about this and I write about that. And one of the things I do as part of the blog is I kind of like set up what we might call shelfies or shelfscapes, just to kind of like look at how colour plays and interacts. And I said, and I do these shelfies. And she went, she goes, shelfie? Has anyone written a book about that? And so it was one of those things where I went away and I built up a kind of a book proposal, and she touted it around. And then I got the book deal probably about 4 or 5 months later from gosh, I've forgotten who my publisher is. That's terrible. Sorry, I'll come back to that. They're big. Octopus. Thank you. And yeah, and then it happened, and it all happened very, very quickly. We shot it very quickly. I wrote it super quickly. And then it was published in July 2018. So that
in a year you went from 0 to published, and
exactly. And although there was obviously the fact that I had been published on, in psychologies that came into it, it wasn't just that. The whole thing was, so that was brilliant. That was the marriage of not my old career, my original existing career, and the meeting place, the dovetailing with the colour file, which is kind of what I am so keen to kind of like talk about, that whole thing of like your existing career doesn't have to be something that you throw away. It can be something that segues, that joins with what it is you want to do next. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Sure. So if you were going to give advice to people, obviously, people might be listening to this and they're thinking, I've got this idea and I'm not sure I'm going to, carry on with my career. And I think at the moment is to diversify as much as we possibly can.
Definitely.
Know what's ahead of us in terms of it's going to be a new world post-COVID. What advice have you got to give to people around reinventing yourself, reinventing your career, and sort of really going for it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been having a think about this a lot since I knew I was going to be talking with you. I mean, I think there are a number of things. I mean, in terms of I think evolution rather than revolution is a really important one. I really, really do. I think that, we had, it was a long time ago now, but I actually think it kind of stuck. The whole thing about a year in Provence, it was in 1989, and everybody was talking about that complete leap, changing the country that you live in, changing everything, changing your career. And I think the thing is about that massive and rapid leaps aren't always possible. You've got sort of family life issues, schools split families, having to be near older relatives, you've got finances, and then also that whole thing about fear. You can't always feel the fear and do it anyway. Sometimes you have to just kind of sit and watch things evolve, give it sort of like a helping hand, but not feel that you have to change everything radically. That's one of the things I would say, because if I had done that, if I'd said, right, well, I'm only going to do the colour file and I'm not going to do any writing, I wouldn't have been able to pay the bills, so you have to be sensible about it. You have to be, I mean, some people might have that ability to have the funds or the freedom to just try something entirely new, but I don't think for most people that is an option. But I also think that if you engage revolution rather than evolution, you're in danger of leaving behind an existing skill set that can actually help to shape the success of the new venture. So in my case, the fact that I am a writer is something that has helped to build the colour file, because people look at it, they tell me, people look at it for the visuals, but they also love the writing. They go there for those two things together. So, if I had done what I had been talking about when I first spoke to you in that session and gone off and been a psychologist or something, maybe the visuals would never have happened, and therefore the colour file would never have happened. I would have carried on writing for sure, but that next stage in terms of personal fulfillment wouldn't necessarily have happened. So I think evolution rather than revolution would be one of my sort of like key messages for people.
I think you're completely right as well. I mean, before I was out of psychology, I've coached many people to it's called Making the Big Leap, was my business. And I think there's that piece around, actually, what you find is that not many people make the big leap. One, as you say, because many of us have got families, but also that we haven't got trust funds. We have to pay the bills and do all of those things. And so it becomes almost, you just start doing the thing that you love. And then often in the evenings, I mean, I started coaching in the evenings, I had a practice in the evenings, and then, it started to grow and grow and grow. So then it took equal status with my writing and my editing. And then it became so big that I couldn't do as much writing. And it was, as you say, it's an evolution, and this idea that it's got to support you. So often we have to, I mean, sometimes it kind of goes bang and but normally I say it takes around 3 years to actually build a business that can actually support you.
Yeah.
And to kind of set yourself up, because sometimes people can set themselves up to fail and think, oh, this has got to work within 6 months, but it takes time. So to have this reinvention, I think it's good, as you're saying, to have this skill set behind you, whether it's writing or it's that you're sewing, or you've got a kind of a day job that you can go part-time, and then but that enables you to pay the bills. Because I think that is the trickiest bit, isn't it? Is a bit for many of us. I mean, I know both of us are single mothers, so we had to kind of keep the show on the road. We had to provide for our families and do all of that, as well as build our businesses. So it's not, it wasn't easy to do that. It is possible, but it is possible.
Yeah, totally. There was something that you just said then. I think the thing as well is to kind of, because some people might say, and maybe people who are listening to this might say, well, it's very easy to kind of imagine how, as a writer, you could marry that up with something else that you do. Because if you discover that you really love, I don't know, abseiling, and you can make an abseiling business, you can then write about it, and it makes kind of like sense that you can do those things and they can help each other. But I was thinking, well, what other kind of businesses might there be? Well, it might be that you're a dental nurse, but you really love cooking, and then it could be that you can then start to have a blog about nutrition and, sort of like coming up with menus for people who want to have a low sugar diet or something like that. So sometimes it's not necessarily that obvious how the old might help to support the new, but it's worth kind of like thinking about if there is some kind of link, because actually it might not become very apparent. It might not be apparent, but it can become apparent if you really start thinking about it. Tossing the idea around with friends as well, I think, could really help. And I think, sorry, Karen.
Well, I was just going to ask you the kind of the belief question around. So we can have lots of ideas. I have lots of ideas, and then sometimes I talk myself out of them. How did you kind of garner belief in the color file, and how, and what advice would you give to other people about, if you've got an idea, how do you kind of blow air into it, so it can get off the ground?
I think gosh, there are so many things with regards to this, because I mean, the number of times when I've kind of said, right, that's it, I'm going to give up, I'm not going to lie, it hasn't just been like a smooth road. And actually it's often my son who says, you've put so much into it now, you can't give up. So often it is other people who just kind of like keep you buoyed, I suppose. I think just kind of like, sorry, remind me of your question again.
How do you kind of dispel doubt in the moment when you have a big pang of doubt? I mean, I've got a great idea, I'm going to do it in the moment, and then you start doubting yourself. How do you dispel doubt, and how do you start believing in yourself?
I think you've got to, one of the things is to stop hearing the noise, because I think one of the things in this day and age is, especially because a lot of reinvention can incorporate social media, which I think has been incredible for giving people a voice, and for me, the visuals and the access and to other people and the route to market and various things. But I think also it can be the thing that can be your great downfall, in the sense that you think, what I'm doing is pointless, I'm not getting many followers, or I'm, people don't seem to like this, or I just feel like a lonely voice shouting in the wind. But actually, I think sometimes you've just got to, it's just kind of hunkering down, and kind of reminding yourself, and maybe this is kind of stating the obvious, but exactly where you've come from, because when you've started something, it's a bit like when you go for a run. And you could say to yourself, oh, I only did 1 kilometre, or I only did 2 kilometres. It's like, yeah, but that was more than you had done half an hour ago when you were sat on your sofa. And I think it's kind of reminding yourself that you've achieved something, and it might not be the achievement that's right over there where you'd like to be, but it's not over there where you were. And I think that a sense of perspective about your journey so far and where you've traveled from is really important. And just hunkering down and just like that self-care thing, when you're giving yourself a hard time, you would not say those things to your friends, so do not say them to yourself.
Yeah, sure. And your evolution, where are you now? So you started with an idea, you made it happen. So you're selling art now? What
I am, yeah. Well, again, this is the other thing as well, is, you know, it starting a business or starting a venture feels like a very lonely place, but actually, quite apart from social media, you've got other people, either through social media or just friends, who often give you these kind of like these wisdoms and truths that sometimes you don't register and you don't hear at first, and then they help things to become reality. So that happened with me. I mean, I was kind of, every day I create visuals. Every day I'm either doing sort of like a flat lay arrangement, you know, where I take the photo of something from above, whether it's kind of buttons or stamps arranged or something, or I'll take a photo of some shelves, or I'll go out and take photos. And every day there's something new. And friends of mine, a couple of friends of mine, said, you should do something with these. You should sell these images because you've created them. They're there. And so before I actually did that, I thought about it and I thought, yeah, I will. And then a company from America, a puzzle company, contacted me and asked if they could buy one of my images. And that has now been put on a jigsaw puzzle, which is sold in the States. Apparently it's sold out. I think that's more to do with lockdown than my image. But anyway, I'm just in the process of creating another one for them at the moment. So, you know, which is great. And they found me through Instagram. And they actually found me when they said when they were Googling one of my idols and my name popped up. So I was like, oh my God. And so that whole imposter syndrome thing starts creeping in then as well, of course. But so I started creating art, started creating post greetings cards, and they are selling. And it's, you know, it's a really funny thing though, Susie, because I guess as a writer, and you will understand this, as a writer, it's kind of like, well, you sell your creations all the time because you're selling your words. But there's something about that thing of like starting something yourself from scratch, you know, in your case, your business, your life coaching business, and in my case actual physical cards that arrive in my house, and I look at them and I go, oh my gosh, I'm sending these out to somebody. There's something about that's a really lovely growth experience. So I've, you know, at the age of 51, I felt that feeling for the first time, which is I never thought I would feel that kind of like, wow, this is something I've done, you know. And so it's never too late.
And it's never too late. And this is just the beginning. I mean, I love your story, Martha. It's such, I love what you've done. I love what you've created. I love your blog. I love the color file. But mostly I just love that you're doing it and you're making it happen, and then you're putting it out in the world. And I think that's why I wanted to interview you today, because I just think your story is one that I want other people to hear, is that you can just start, just begin, get your idea and start and begin. And don't think you've got to have a, you know, as I say, we had the online dossier about how to create your own business. Carrie Green does a great online business kind of thing if you want a community, but just start, really. So Martha, thank you so much for your time today. Check out Martha's amazing blog and her Instagram account. All the details are below. And thanks again, Martha, for just, you know, inspiring us today. I love your story. I love it.
Thank you so much, Susie. Well, you've been a massive part of the story, so thank you more than anything that I can say. Thank you.
Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.